use an analogy to open up their last speech, so I decided I would use one of my own. Now, let's say I was in jail for committing a crime. Say I was money laundering. And then they let me out on parole, and they said, alright, for good behavior, you can go out and we can test it out and see if you're still, if you can be a good person again. But let's say I murdered somebody after I'm on parole. Now, what happens? I go back to jail. And so what you can see here is that the punishment was the same. I went back to jail, but the crime changed. The crime was the same, but the punishment was different. And this corresponds exactly to Jackson Vick, because what we can see is that Russia is out on parole right now. They're getting waivers. They're getting this normal trade relation status, which is not permanent at the moment, but we're testing them out to see if their human rights are actually good enough to be believed. So what we see is that the responsibilities that they have are the same as Jackson Vick. They don't have permanent trade status yet, but the crime is different because they are conducting human rights, which is the spirit of Jackson Vick, and I'll be addressing that a little more. So in this speech, I'll be going over the goals and basically talking a bit about those two, and then I'll be bringing up two disadvantages, talking about how repealing Jackson Vick will harm human rights and our stance on human rights, and then secondly, I'll be talking about how this is a hypocritical policy, and it is not the right thing to do. Now let's talk a little bit about the goals. They brought up a goal of net benefits, and we brought up a counter goal of human rights. Now what they said was that they did not have a way to measure net benefits, but in their last speech they were talking a lot about consistency, and they directly said that consistency is the whole point of our case. So let's measure net benefits with consistency. So they said consistency is the policy we should be upholding. Now let's look and see how consistent we are on our human rights and how consistent this policy would be, and if that would actually be net beneficial. So first off, let's start out with talking a little bit about human rights. Now my partner brought up this point briefly in her speech. She talked about relations. She said that relations are not an end. So I'll be extending this a little bit and talking about how human rights are much higher precedent than relations on this point. Now let's talk about how many violations Russia has on human rights. So my partner also read that Jackson Vick, in the preamble, it talks about how Jackson Vick is meant for human rights abuses, and this is the spirit of the law. We must be looking at the spirit of the law because we do need to determine our human rights in order to be doing the right thing. So let's look at the violations. First, I bring up a cyber attack on Estonia. In the past, Russia committed the cyber attack on Estonia, this undefended country, and they basically took out the whole banking thing. They were not being just on this point. They were attacking and doing unjust things to other countries. This is a tyrannical policy. Taking out vengeance on Estonia for something, a post-Soviet state, because they wanted to take Estonia back over. So they were violating the rights of Estonia, another country. And so secondly, Russia murders protesting opposers. So there's this conflict in the Caucasus regions, which is below Russia,